That tiny line of wood is about as useful as a toothpick against a tank. And yet, our friend here is trying to measure a creature the size of a giraffe that decided gravity was merely a polite suggestion. Welcome to the Ledger, where we treat physics like a suggestion and biology like a dare. Today, we're looking at the Quetzalcoatlus. Forget everything you know about graceful birds. We aren't talking about a pigeon. We're talking about a 250-kilogram nightmare of aeronautical engineering that defied the square cube law just to get a snack. How did something this heavy manage to defy nature's biggest rulebook? Let's dissect the mechanics of a flying giraffe. All right, let's talk about the Quetzalcoatlus. Imagine a creature the size of a light aircraft deciding it wants to go for a stroll. Seriously, this thing is a nightmare for anyone with a measuring tape. It had an 11-meter wingspan. That's as wide as a school bus. When you compare it to a modern giraffe, the Quetzalcoatlus stands almost as tall, but with half the weight. We're talking about a 250-kilogram beast, mostly hollow bone and sheer audacity. Trying to park this animal in a standard garage is like trying to fit a skyscraper into a shoebox. It's physically absurd, and yet the laws of physics let this thing own the skies. If you think the physics of a flying giraffe are wild, wait until you see how they actually got off the ground. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the launch mechanics. Now, before our giant friend was a sky-dominating beast, it started out as something surprisingly small, a leathery, palm-sized egg. Becoming a Quetzalcoatlus wasn't a slow, gentle process. These creatures hit a massive growth spurt, and the secret behind it was their bones. They were pneumatized, meaning they were practically hollow, filled with air sacs like a bird's. This engineering allowed them to reach the size of a giraffe without weighing as much as one. But let's be real, life in the Cretaceous was brutal. Before they could fly, these flightless hatchlings were basically oversized, awkward snacks for every predator in the ecosystem. It's a wild transformation, from a ground-bound, vulnerable meal to an apex terrestrial hunter that could strut across the landscape before eventually taking to the clouds. But how does a creature that big actually generate enough lift to take off? We're breaking down the physics of their launch sequence in the next segment, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the takeoff. Now imagine trying to lift a giraffe off the ground using only your arms. Sounds impossible, right? That is essentially what the Quetzalcoatlus had to do every time it wanted to fly. Unlike birds, which use their hind legs to jump, this giant utilized a quadrupedal launch, essentially vaulting off the ground with its massive chest muscles. Think of its arm joints as a professional pole vaulter's spring. It stored an incredible amount of elastic energy, snapping its wings downward to catapult its entire body into the air. But it wasn't just raw power. If you look at these digital wind tunnel overlays, you'll see that ridiculously long beak and neck weren't just dead weight. They acted like a sophisticated rudder, precision instruments that steered this living aircraft through the sky with surgical accuracy. If you're wondering how an animal the size of a Cessna could actually land without turning into a pile of broken sticks, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we're breaking down the physics of their landing gear in the very next part. Now, imagine this sky giant navigating a modern-day city. If a Quetzalcoatlus decided to cruise down Broadway, it wouldn't be dodging pigeons. It would be treating skyscrapers like inconvenient speed bumps. It's a terrifyingly beautiful image, isn't it? But there is a heavy irony here. We spend our time obsessing over these ancient behemoths, yet we struggle to keep our current apex flyers, like the California condor, in the clouds. The ghost of the Quetzalcoatlus reminds us that being big doesn't make you invincible. When we look at the mechanics of these extinct legends, we aren't just doing math. We're learning the blueprints for survival. It's humbling to realize that the sky once hosted giraffes with wings, and it's a wake-up call to ensure that our modern giants don't become just another fossil in our archives. If you want to decode more of nature's wildest engineering, hit that subscribe button and join us as we break down the physics behind the planet's most extreme survivors. So, whether it's biological evolution or just sheer aerodynamic defiance, nature clearly doesn't care about our petty human rulers. The Quetzalcoatlus remains the ultimate proof that you don't need to be aerodynamic to rule the sky. You just need to be big enough to scare the wind into submission. Anyway, stop trying to measure the impossible and just enjoy the view. Stay curious, stay messy, and catch you in the next fossil hunt.